Hi, in this video, I want to show you how to use structured outputs for content moderation. We are going to use structured outputs to moderate text containing specific categories. You can use specific models from OpenAI, such as these models, or use Ollama for this example, if you want to run the model locally. The main objective of structured outputs is to constrain an LLM's output using a JSON schema. Over here, you can see they have different use cases for parsing data from documents, extracting data from images, and more. In this example, we want to use structured outputs from the OpenAI API to do content moderation. I have already created a project for this in Cursor. To implement structured output, we first need to install Pydantic and import the base model. We also need to install OpenAI. You have noticed here I have created a new OpenAI client to make an API call. Next, we use Pydantic to define our response format. Here we have the class category, consisting of taxonomy of terms we want to moderate. So we have violence, sexual, and self-harm. Then we use Pydantic to define the response format by passing the base model. In this class, we specify whether a particular text is violating or not. We add the text category and also explanation if the text is considered as violating. Next, we create a new chat completion instance and specify the model we want to use. Not all the OpenAI models support structured outputs, so you should come to the Structured Outputs API page and scroll down. Under supported models, you can see we have all these type of models you can experiment with. Next, you specify the message field consisting of two roles, a system and a user. The system is responsible for determining if a user input violates specific guidelines. Then there will be an explanation if the text is violating. The last requirement of the chat completion is the response format. That is this class we defined using Pydantic. Lastly, we create a new compliance from the chat completion and print it out. For the user content, we can add a phrase to test each of the categories, that is violence, sexual, and self-harm. First, let's test a phrase that is not found in these categories. For example, send me the files. So I'm going to save the changes and press Ctrl and backtick to bring the terminal and run the file with Python 3, followed by the file name, that is moderated structured output.py. You have noticed here we have the Boolean parameter is violating as false. This is because the phrase we entered does not fall into any of the categories. So we have the category as none. You have noticed here, explanation if violating is set to none as well. Let's display the output nicely as a JSON format and change the phrase. So we are going to install and import JSON. Next, we are going to modify the print statement. So I'm going to uncomment these lines. So what we are doing here is to display the output as a JSON format. So by saving the file, I will go back to the terminal and clear everything. Then I'll run the file once more. You have noticed here, we now have the output displayed as JSON. So we have each of the fields on a new line. Let's modify the phrase. So I'm going to change this text and save the changes. Then I'll come to the terminal and run the file again. You have now noticed there is a difference between the first run and the second run. We have the violating Boolean as true for the second run, and the category is violence. We also have an explanation about why the phrase is considered as violent. Let's clear everything in the output. Another thing we can do is to add more categories for the moderation. We can, for example, add hate speech, harassment, spam, and insult. Let's, for example, test insult. So I'm going to change the phrase, save the changes, and run the file again. You have noticed we have the violating Boolean set to true, and the category is now insult. And we have an explanation why the phrase is an insult. Let's clear the terminal again. So from the phrase we just entered, it is much obvious that this is an insult. Let's also examine another situation where this word is contained in a phrase that is not considered as an insult. So I'll go to the browser. Over here, I entered this phrase, complete idiot's guide. So we are going to search this on Amazon. You have noticed here we have different kinds of books containing the phrase "The Complete Idiot's Guide." So this is just a title of a book. Let's copy this one, "The Complete Idiot's Guide to Physics." So let's replace the phrase with the one I have in the clipboard and save the changes. I will then expand the terminal and run the file again. You have now noticed it's violating its force. It doesn't fall into any of the categories. So there is also no explanation. So this is how to use structured outputs of the OpenAI API for content moderation use case.